acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet. For me, this is the Whadjuk Noongar people of the Boorloo Nation here in Perth, Western Australia. And for Alex, it is the Woiwurrung, Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, also known as Melbourne. We pay our respects to elders past and present. I met Alex at conference drinks in the UK, inside a museum surrounded by stuffed animals. It was quite surreal. And then hearing an Aussie accent across the room was just delightful. But even better, the next day, Alex gave one of the most practical and inspiring Agile talks that I've seen. I'm very pleased that she's agreed to share her talk with the Agile Perth community. And thank you to you, our growing Agile Perth community, for rocking up this evening to grow your agility knowledge. Without you, these workshops couldn't happen. And a special call out for all our sketchnoters of all levels. Please grab your paper and pens and your 5-year-old confidence in your ability to draw so that you can record today's points. Let's see who does it better, the sketchnoters or AI. Welcome, Alex. Thank you. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Faye. That's a great intro. And yes, it was awesome to meet a fellow Aussie when we were over in another continent doing conference stuff. It was so weird. Someone pursuing me across the room going, I was told there was another Australian here. Could this be true? Could this be possible? And indeed there was. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get into this talk. So it is, and just tell me if this screen is sharing nicely for me, will you?
Yes, it is. It's sharing beautifully.
Beautiful. And so this talk is a slightly updated version of the talk that I gave in Agile 24, which was in Manchester, the European edition. And then also, if anyone, I don't know if anyone has attended Agile Australia last year as well, I also gave a variant of this talk, but I try and keep it fresh and updated all the time. So hopefully you'll find something of use in it. And also I'm very cool with you chatting away in the chat. I've got a few interactive questions to try and keep it engaging for us because we're all online, so it's got to be engaging, right? And I do also have my little cheat notes, which I didn't have when I was on stage in those other occasions a little bit. So you will see me reading occasionally, and it will be interesting to see what Gemini makes of it because I do talk a lot in this talk. I have some opinions and some thoughts. I'm going to share them. So it'll be interesting how wordy Gemini makes all of that. And so today our talk is about Frameless or empowering your Agile transformation. And another intro for me is that I work in a boutique consultancy called Reboot Co in Melbourne, and I have a co-founder called Tony Fivefoot. And like a lot of you on this call, we consult, coach, and help organisations to be better. And our mission is to transform every workplace that we work in so people love their jobs. And yeah, it's great to be invited here by Faye, and I was delighted to be invited to a meetup called Agile Perth because Agile meetups are kind of my kind of people. They're the kind of people I love hanging out with, and, you know, Agile meetups, Agile conferences are the places I kind of love going. And so just another little intro, though, about me is before we started Reboot Co in 2018, I used to work inside many organisations as heads of technology or in engineering manager roles because I have a background in tech way ago. And so I've helped companies as a consultant and do that today, but also experienced and sort of led this kind of change from inside organisations, and that's kind of what's shaped my perspective. And the reason I'm talking about this topic is that my specialty has become how to transform successfully in the enterprise. In fact, so much so that, you know, with great conceit, I wrote a book about it that Faye held up before. And I'm going to be giving you all a special deal today for the ebook, like an amazing deal. But also I've got a deal for the paperback as well, if you're in Australia, which I'll share at the end. And I don't know about you, but the transformations I'm seeking are authentic, engaging, empowering, but might be eluding your team. And what I've come to observe is that they have to be happening at the exec leadership and exec management level. And I'm going to talk to you about the importance we have in helping those leaders know what agility really is. It's not something you can buy or install with a framework. And we'll talk a little bit about how to navigate some anti-patterns around large-scale Agile adoption that can lead to failure. And I've got a few solutions and ideas and 4 useful patterns for you to take away and use in your work and in your craft as well. And there could even be a little aha moment for yourself in this session, which I hope there is, because, you know, that's kind of what we try and generate in others. And when we're doing this work is, you know, those little aha moments that kind of make you go, wow. But first of all, let's sit in an uncomfortable reality. That is that the majority of Agile transformations actually fail. And apparently 70% of transformations fail, according to this stat and according to that reference that I've got there. And quick quiz though, and answer in the chat if you like. Does anyone know what the failure rate of software projects was back in the 1990s? Back in the time before Agile existed. We've got a few 70%, 70-ish. Very good team. So apparently it was 80 to 85% of software projects failed to deliver on time, to scope, or quality. And that was kind of the atmosphere, that was the perfect conditions for an alternative approach to emerge, which of course became known as Agile. But even today, the success rate of even Agile projects is only 42%. So we have improved delivery execution from 20% to 42%, but not really hugely successful still. And just to keep the stats relevant and up to date, did anyone see the Gallup State of the Workplace survey results, which have just been published? I don't know if anyone saw that in the last couple of days. It's a bit sobering. So global employee engagement declined to 21% in 2024, with managers experiencing the largest drop. And also global employee life evaluations declined for a second consecutive year, apparently. So in other words, am I happy at work? Am I experiencing mental unwellness or depression or sadness or loneliness? And with managers also experiencing the largest drop as well. So the data shows that employees, particularly managers, feel disconnected. So the world of work is changing whether we like it or not. But think about those stats. Only 42% success rate on Agile projects, only 21% employee engagement, and 70% failure rate of transformations. And, you know, we know that companies are no doubt trying to change for the better, fast enough, trying to be better. But as we know, so many of those companies are just getting it way, way wrong. And are we doing well? All of us attending an Agile meetup, putting Agile into their book titles and using these techniques in the workplace to help teams in the kind of Agile is dead era. You know, all of these conferences and roles supporting the Agile industry, and still only 42% success in projects and 30% success in transformation. You know, my company, my role is kind of like devoted to that stuff. And maybe your role is too, as a bringer of good change. For that 42% result, we must really love to work hard. We must really love a challenge, hey? And so then just think and reflect, maybe, how is transformation work really going in your place? How are your Agile teams or your Agile execution really performing? Because when I learned about this 70% failure rate, it made me reflect, what have we done wrong? How are people getting it so wrong? And why is it so hard to apply agility 23 years after the manifesto? And, you know, how does it feel for you? Are you trying to lift this big, heavy weight when you're bringing that kind of change? Are you constantly fighting negative anti-patterns and try and educate people around you? Or are people engaging with the liberation that working as good Agile teams can bring? Or does it feel like something else, like people are kind of agiling as hard as they can in the team, but maybe there's a bunch of factors stopping them from really feeling that successful flow of value? So maybe it's Agile teams are in pockets, but there's maybe generalized dysfunction in the organization all around them. And, you know, are you spending too much of your time coaching issues that are around the team, not for the team themselves? because the stuff that you're doing with Agile teams is helpful, but it's maybe not the organization's biggest problem. And, you know, like, who's with me who thinks that just coaching an Agile team without dealing with all of the other stuff that's blocking them and getting their ways around them above and in between Agile teams sounds like a kind of a dream job? Because I think just coaching an Agile team these days and being able to do it really well would be a job that kind of I would love to do. And it seems quite elusive. And is this Agile or is this social media at fault? So this took me an hour to find some of these little fun clips that we're going to share today. And I'm just going to ask you, you know, how do we feel about this opinion in the Agile community? There's a lot of I hate Agile, or is Agile terrible, or Agile is not dead because it doesn't even work. Is it being killed? Is it being killed by consultancies making a lot of money, installing SAFe? There's quite a lot of SAFe hatred out there. And it gets worse and worse as we go. To the point of my personal favorite, Agile is dead, Scrum is dead, everything's dead. We know it all. Here's my unfiltered take. So it kind of makes me super sad, right? Because it felt like we were just getting somewhere, you know, like in the maybe teens, 2015s, 2014, somewhere around then. And then it feels like it's all being taken away from us. Does anyone else feel like that? Hearing all the rhetoric on social media? Yes, Bruce, me too. So I'm pretty passionate about doing something about that. I mean, I was motivated enough to write a book about it, and I'm sort of tired of listening to the backlash and the holy wars about agility, and it makes me so sad because for me, Agile was this kind of beautiful, pure idea that helped me and helped the teams and the organizations and the companies that I worked in. So this transformation failure, this lack of engagement in the work we see, and this division in the people who have opinions about it, I'm wondering, can we rescue the reputation of Agile back from this? Maybe if our transformations went a little better, it could help this state of affairs and we could avoid this kind of wagile, fragile, Agile. So a question for you to think about for the next few minutes, and very happy for people to come off mute and share if they want to share, or just share in the chat if they want to. Think back to, when did you first come across Agile? When you first encountered this thing called Agile and you heard that it might be something to pay attention to, or what was it about this style of working that kind of really appealed to you, that spoke to you? Was it in relation to something that you read, something that you heard, or was it something that you experienced yourself working in a team or watching a team do their work? So just, I'm going to give you some time even later to answer this as well. Just take a moment and reflect and think about that moment when you were truly convinced that these ways of working were better. So, and feel free to share in the comments, or come off mute if anyone wants to share their own origin story. And I'm looking for condensed versions of origin stories, but please do feel free to do that if you want to. Anyone?
Sure, I'm happy to go first. I was involved in big projects, so implementing payroll systems with big go live dates, and the lead up to the go live meant that in that last month I might do 80 hours of overtime. And I was managing the payroll system at an organization that was transforming, and I went, this sounds amazing. Pace over perfection, little incremental go lives, and that got me really excited, and I talked my way into a role there, and I have loved it ever since.
Excellent. Nice one. Charlotte, thank you. Excited to try something different. I was a test manager and being siloed, was excited to become a team. And Bruce has got loved work that encompassed social interaction. And Michael Fagan, who I know, and he's going to appear on one of my slides in a minute as well. Maybe he doesn't know that. What did Michael say? I became a believer when I saw it working. I was skeptical though before then, as there are plenty of people saying selling Agile that is not Agile. Working in teams, making awesome products with great people. Thank you, Will. And in 2009, a colleague mentioned he read about something called Scrum, which nobody heard of, and asked we would like to try in our team. It was the beginning of a great learning journey. Okay, great examples. Thank you all so much for sharing. Yes, and it's interesting to me about people that share when they experience something themselves for the first time. Slight tangent, we're going to talk about aha moments. So, you know that feeling, that light bulb moment when you learn something for the first time that kind of makes the skin tingle on your arms and makes you go, whoa, or gives you shivers. So here are some quotes, people describing aha moments. A moment of clarity where all of a sudden things make sense, like being hit by a truck. It gives you chills. It does make you feel as though there's possibility everywhere. Can be a lifetime turning point. Something you didn't expect to know, didn't seek to know, but it happened. And I talked to a friend of mine who's done some work in neuroscience, and he said that when you have an aha moment, there's actually a mismatch in expectation, what you're expecting versus reality. And you can actually record it happening in the brain if you're scanning the brain at that moment. And it also stimulates learning and memory formation. And this phenomenon can shift a person's perspective from skeptical to being convinced, or from uncertain to being inspired. And it's happening by this kind of chemical cocktail of serotonin and dopamine happening in the brain. So it's very powerful, and it's something that might initially be an emotional response which hooks you in, and then you'll be more willing to examine that something with your logical brain. And so people, can often have life-changing realizations that inspire their own journeys after an aha moment. So what I want to do is share some aha moments from a couple of leaders I know who are really spot on about how they use agility, and who are kind of great senior leaders of influence and authority in their organizations, and create the right leadership conditions that allow agile teams to thrive. First one is Adrian Fidlani. I don't know if anyone knows Fidder. He's head of technology at MYOB, which is a fintech company based in Melbourne. We're actually customers of MYOB. They build a SaaS accounting software, and he's been a GM, an exec at various different startups, scale-ups, and he's a long-term Agilist. If you've been to Agile Australia in the early days, he was very often on the stage there. And his aha moment came in 2005 when he was working as a project manager, slaving over a Microsoft project plan, as we all used to do back in those days. And he was leveling his resources, scheduling tasks for Jimmy, the developer, that would happen in September, pushed his chair away from the desk and said out loud, "What the heck is this? I'm lying here. I don't know what Jimmy is doing in September. It's April." And he thought to himself there had to be a better way. And that realization began his quest for a better way that led him and his curiosity to something called Scrum. A little bit similar to someone in our notes tonight. This is Michael Fagan. Michael happens to be on the call tonight, which is nice. I'm going to say nice things about Michael now. He's a senior C-suite leader. When I met him, he was the CTO of Kmart and Target in Australia. And he was already an experienced lean practitioner, as lean had been rolled out right across the business already. And when we started transforming his tech teams to use agile ways of working, I asked him what convinced him about agile. And I'm actually going to just quote this so I don't get it wrong. He said, "An important part is the concept of focusing on value and unlocking value early. Something about doing things in big batches is a way of things hiding, and working in smaller batches, things couldn't be hidden anymore. If something took 18 weeks to plan and execute, then a lot of unnecessary steps and systems got set up. Separate HR systems, security systems that involve other people and handoffs. When you aim to do it in 2 weeks, you don't have time to set that up. You have to get your people close to the problem, all focused on it, and then a 2-week time frame is possible. Suddenly all of those handoffs and waiting times go away because people are doing the most important things only." So when Michael started hearing about agility and those principles, straight away he could relate to what they were saying, because he had experienced those problems of handoffs and waiting time in his previous work. And also, maybe we could get Michael to come off mic and talk as well. But Michael was also curious enough that he started to visit people who had done their agile transformations, practicing something we call Genchi Genbutsu, nice Japanese term. If anyone wants to share what they think Genchi Genbutsu means in the chat, that would be awesome. So he visited places like Sportsbet, Amazon, Target USA, I believe, JCPenney as well, because he wanted to see it in companies that weren't just digital retailers. He wanted to see companies that had bricks and mortar. So those couple of examples, Adrian and Michael, different people, different aha moments. And I wonder if these people, or even you yourself, would have been convinced if they hadn't had those first-hand experiences themselves. So there's something very strong about experiencing things. Any comments? Is Michael still with us?
I am still here, Alex. Thank you.
Very good.
For me, but yeah, I mean, we went to all those organizations, so Silicon Valley Bank, PEXA. But you know, as a CTO, I think I got my EA to count up once, you know, how many companies contacted me selling me stuff, and in 1 week we have 150 contacts come in. So you got people selling stuff the same way today. Everything that people are selling today is AI or AI enabled or large language model, and really it's ChatGPT in a box with a skin around it. So there's quite a lot of stuff that's out there that isn't really agile. But then I met yourself, Vicky, Glenn Davies as well, who were, you know, absolutely believers in it. When I saw, you know, I even within my own organization, though, I had multiple experiences of it. So when I went to the cloud transformation team, they said, "Oh, we're agile." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" They go, "Well, look at my wall," and they showed me a wall with post-it notes on it. So they've done a good job of visualizing work. But then if I had a look at a post-it note, some of them were 6 months old and hadn't been moved in 6 months. So I think there's a lot of, I don't want to call it fake agile, but people that have, you know, read the books or read some blogs and think they're practicing, but actually, you know, they're doing agile rather than being agile is the way I would describe it.
Awesome. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk tonight, Michael, and featuring on my slides for me. Awesome. Okay. So I thought I'd share my aha moment with you all as well. And it happened early on in my career. I was on a project that failed miserably when delivered in production. It resulted in about 200 users experiencing a blue screen of death in a call centre. And if you tried to contact British Airways customer service centre on that day in 1997, your call centre agent would have been back to using a pen and paper to deal with your inquiry. And that was a large, embarrassing waterfall failure that included software that I had personally written. So it was pretty much a low point very early in my career, the kind of feedback on the software that you never want. And these were pre-internet days. If it was post-internet days, it would have been a very public failure, like a CrowdStrike or, you know, the US healthcare gov launch crashing software, or even like a RoboDebt type of failure. So in some ways back then we were lucky to be isolated from software failure in public. And my feeling is the world just won't tolerate that failure rate anymore in public. But that was my experience very early on. And fast forward to the next project I was on, and we followed one of these new methodologies, and it was called DSDM. It was in the UK. And, you know, DSDM was one of the early agile methodologies, and we applied it and we had tremendous success. The software worked. It was high quality. The customers were happy. And we also enjoyed the experience. And funnily enough, it was the same software product that we were trying to integrate. It was even the same client, and it was mostly the same people on the development team, with such a hugely different and positive result. And that's what convinced me. And I never wanted to go back to that waterfall failure mode ever again. And that inspired my quest for agility, chasing that same feeling of success. And it just felt like magic how we could achieve things in weeks when other companies would be taking months and months to deliver disappointment and failure. So I was most definitely hooked. And it was a kind of a pure journey for me after that, to follow down all these threads and discover what other people were doing with DSDM, but also extreme programming. Extreme programming and my curiosity there led me to joining ThoughtWorks, finding out about Scrum, and then watching this kind of word agile become a crystallized concept. So it was kind of like from embarrassing failure of being in the software industry to experiencing this kind of rock solid way of delivering value. And, you know, maybe your discovery is something along the same lines, because you're passionate enough after all these years to come to a meetup called Agile Perth. Despite the challenges, despite the difficulties and, you know, the potential failure rate, you kind of love this hard work too, right? So there's something that's hooked you in. And in that way, we sort of share the same early Agile DNA. And when you have a genuine aha moment, your own curiosity is now what's driving your learning journey. And up until that point, you can be skeptical, reserving judgment, and doing what you've always done before. So just think again of your aha moment in relation to discovering agility and wonder to yourself, was it something that you experienced firsthand like me? All right, are execs involved? So what about our execs? Have they experienced an aha moment in relation to agility? Maybe not too many of them have. You know, we encounter these leaders who are not too involved in those key agile team experiences. They're leading somewhat outside and above the team. And they might be running things counter to how you would rather it be running. You know, tripping up the team constantly, asking for old school status reports, demanding roadmaps and dates to be met, and not really able to nurture the conditions that make it so effective to be delivering value, doing product development, doing you know, customer-led insights and design in an agile team. So have they experienced an aha moment themselves in relation to agility? Maybe not. So thinking about execs and other leaders in the organization and their importance to the system of work. So when we think of the system of work, who's responsible for the number of teams we might have, how we might restructure and organize the organization, or how work is funded? That's the exec, right? So you cannot do that in your agile squad in a grassroots kind of movement, even if you wanted to. Execs are the ultimate custodians of the system of work. And the funny thing is they want the results of agility. They want to be more adaptable to the world and the market. They want to be delivering value earlier. They want to be delivering quality products. So they want the promise of agility. They might not say the words, give me agile, but they do want those results. And they might not know or have experienced a truly successful agile transformation, right? Because of this 70% failure statistic. So they could be skeptical. They might be thinking, people keep telling me this agile stuff is great, but it's really not been great in my limited exposure to it. And many execs today are working 10 to 20 years out of date. What worked for them when they were in their career trajectory 20 or 30 years ago was before the agile movement. It predated the manifesto. And if they ever worked in software, maybe they learned the bad old ways, like my call center failure ways. So they maybe haven't been in an agile team themselves ever. They don't know the joy of that and that it's far superior in all those aspects of quality software, timeliness, ability to adapt, etc. And they might be experiencing just the fringes of agile, like maybe some big room planning from a distance, or they hear teams prefer this way of working, but they're really not close enough to action to have their own aha moment related to working closely in an agile team. So lack of this first-hand experience and lack of, therefore, literacy in ways of working of the execs leads them to try and implement transformation in the wrong ways. They turn to consultancies who try and sell them something big, like Michael said, 150 emails a day, because that's how they do everything, with big investment, lots and lots of people, and they'll promise you that you can transform in 18 months if you just follow their pre-canned formulas for success. Well, the results that we see don't yield the success they promise, unfortunately. And you can sort of spot where it goes wrong when something goes bad with the agile teams, or someone misses a date, or it took longer than we thought. And the execs kind of don't have the tools and knowledge to understand really what they're looking at. And they revert back to old ways of working. They start to reinforce deadlines. They start to ask for lots and lots of information and governance and put extra management into it. Or even worse, they might start to bottleneck all the decisions. So they ask for extra work that's not adding any value because they're trying to push that agile team back into an old kind of waterfall mold that is comfortable for them and what makes sense to them. And how would they know to do anything different, really? Because they're looking down the lens of their own experience and applying old models to what they're seeing. And we know that consultancies are upselling all the extras. You know, we have 2,000 certified Scrum Masters. You'll get a blueprint of how you do this in a 350-page slide deck from these places. And that is true. The 350-page blueprint exists. And, you know, in Melbourne, I know that there's 4 or 5 companies that have had the same blueprints shipped around their organisations, different headers and footers. And these are real promises that are made, you know, self-select into what sort of company profile you are. This will be the transformation that we'll give you. And they're very difficult for them to have a conversation that deviates from that blueprint. So you're getting these messages straight into your exec teams from the start, and they're setting up this language of process framework adherence as if that's the success factor. So they think framework adherence equals transformation, and this is kind of dangerous for your business to put a non-differentiated process into your organization, because at best, maybe you can all be the same. You're all following the same blueprint. You're all following the same big re-planning process. You might be able to achieve the same mediocrity as all the other large corporations in your vertical at best. And at worst, you might completely cannibalize what is your competitive advantage. You know, like it's actually quite dangerous to all want to be the same. But you know what? I understand, because I have worked in very big places, and maybe some of you on the call have as well. I'm seeing the word playbook written down here in the comments too, including one place that has over 50,000 employees. And in that place, we tried to roll out authentic agile ways of working, and we gave it a really good go. And then a bunch of fearful leaders backed away from the magnitude of the challenge and said, you know what, we're going to need a bigger boat. This is not passing the enterprise test. There's too much fear and competition inside the organization. We need to leverage a framework in order to get this past the process police, basically. So I do understand why we kind of try and reach for those things. But it takes a lot of effort to undo these giant frameworks. A lot of effort. We've had a couple of goes at my company. It's pretty hard to adapt away because they become very entrenched, right? But I think you have to if you want to stay competitive, because as we know, the robots and the AIs are coming for all of our jobs and industries. And I don't think 12-week planning cycles are going to cut it going into the future somehow. Don't know about you. So back to our 90s office cubicle farm. Another one of the reasons frameworks don't work is because they start with a pattern of an agile team and scale up from that point. And that was quite a good step 10 years ago. You know, we recognized there was something so good about these agile, autonomous, self-organizing teams that we should always start with an agile team and try and scale up. And that's not terrible, right? But unfortunately, you can do all of the scaling you like using that pattern without actually touching your executive leadership team or their behavior, which is a product of their career to date. So they can be endorsing your transformation, embedding the big approach without changing one single thing about themselves or how they operate. And that's kind of the crux of the problem. And that's why we have these issues of my agile team might be fine, all the problems exist outside the agile team. So those leaders can continue to engage without engaging the agile operating model at all, and therefore failure and this kind of mismatch of understanding continues. Oh my gosh, what should we do about this? So from darkness to light, I'm going to give you, in a handy listicle of 4, some things that I've learned and what I hope that I can help equip you to do, if you're not already doing it, to improve the outcomes for you, the companies you help, and the execs you're coaching change for. And the first one we've already talked about, which is unlocking aha moments. So what I've learned is it's not enough to just tell people about what you know to be the answer and hope that they say, aha. You know, you've got to do a little bit more, and you can't really control when the aha moment is going to happen. So how can you make it more likely that you can generate it in the people that you're helping? And I thought I'd just share an example recently that this worked for me. So I was working with a client. It was a team of product and technology engineering leaders of an area inside a bigger company, and I was helping them to co-design new ways of working to enable value to flow faster. And one of the leaders kept saying, once we're doing real Scrum, or when we have proper Scrum Masters, as if that was going to be the issue and as if that was going to be the solution. And it confused me, because why on earth did he think we were going to start doing proper Scrum? There was nothing in the findings that I had that suggested Scrum or not doing proper Scrum was the answer to anything. And I realized it was his experience. What he had seen work in the past had been things about to pull it in that Scrum faithful direction. So I decided not to make the conversation about Scrum at all. I didn't want to get into a whole debate about whether it was relevant. And as we moved on as a group, we actually started using team topologies as guidance. And I'll be talking a little bit about team topologies in a minute as well. And I noticed that he repeatedly kept using some phrases that had come from the team topologies book and how we were applying it, like end-to-end ownership of the delivery. Now, he could see, like we all could, a lot of time being wasted in the team, not resolving issues, but booking meetings to talk about things later, different groups of people trying to resolve issues and make decisions. And this had happened for a few reasons. One of them was the team wasn't small, they were huge. And they were so big, they'd created a small leadership team inside the team to get together and talk about important stuff. But this wasn't helping. It was just putting a time delay into everything, as well as disempowering the team who were actually creating the software. But that problem is nothing at all to do with Scrum, right? So when I realized that he'd sort of glommed onto this element of team topologies, then I kept using the same language of team topologies and the phrases that he had landed on, like end-to-end ownership, or let's make the team small enough to have that single responsibility within the team, or let's not make it hard for the team to make decisions, or let's take out the delays in the team making decisions. And once he could see that we were going to stop that other separate team leadership culture, or that separate kind of leadership making decisions culture, his need was served. And his aha was the team won't have to hand off to anyone anymore. They'll stop coming to me for every decision. They'll start to have end-to-end responsibility. And from that point onwards, everything that was part of that change was then kind of explicitly endorsed by him. And his problem solving switched to getting the team end-to-end ownership, not asking for Scrum Masters and for the team to be a proper Scrum team. So that was a revelation, hard one. But in order to support that realization, you kind of have to know that person pretty well and listen to their problems. And I'd spent 2 hours with this guy alone, just kind of listening to him spill out everything he was saying was wrong with the world without judgment, to try and understand it from his perspective. And I think if you're a believer in this power of the aha moment, then you're really going to have to think about how you're going to get all these sparks of inspiration happening in the people that you're working with. And at the very least, you're probably going to want to invest that amount of time yourself in getting to know how they are perceiving the world and the problems around them. So that's my first little tip. Number 2 is a flexible set of tools that experienced people can apply depending on circumstances. And that's kind of been a game changer. This has taken a long time in my career to kind of reach this point, actually. So just like Scrum is not going to be the answer for my friend, none of these tools are solely going to be the answer. And welding yourself into one set of tools and not veering from it, I think, is a bit of a mistake, because it's not going to give you enough sort of room to locally adapt to what's going on in the context, or options to be able to locally adapt. And so here are a few of my recent hits. And I'm not saying you need to use every single one of these tools. I'm just going to tell you a few that I've used and the kind of why I've used them in the circumstances. And the first one is team topologies, which has been a huge game changer. I encourage everyone to read the book. It's really domain-driven design, right? And a lot of us who work in technology or have come from technology would probably agree domain-driven design is a good idea when it comes to kind of designing your teams and designing your architectures. But domain-driven design can be very hard and opaque for people who are not in technology to understand. Whereas team topologies is it's an easy read. I found it's bridged the gap between technology and product people particularly. And anywhere where you're recutting what your teams are going to look like, team topologies has a really good set of guidelines for that. And anywhere where your architecture needs addressing, which is pretty much everywhere in technology, right? Team topologies has a great shortcut through a lot of issues. So big shout out to the team topologies followers. And actually Matthew Skelton's coming to Australia in June to speak at Agile Oz as well. So he's a great guy to follow. Event storming also comes kind of from domain-driven design. And it's a fantastic workshopping technique. So it's really great for complex areas or places where you have established processes already. And it helps you see problems and bottlenecks. And also it's a very collaborative approach to do a workshop. You cannot tell someone to go off and do event storming on their own in a room. The approach requires everyone to be there with their posties and their insights in the room together. And I think this link, and I will let Faye share the slides afterwards as well. This link takes you to, I think, the best place where you can teach yourself event storming, because that's how I learned event storming, by following this link and watching one YouTube clip. So event storming is a great one. And it's also great when you're not just dealing with tech people, because it's not just about the technology process, it's about entire business processes. Lean, I find myself bringing some lean approaches, especially to leaders. So somehow lean is much more suited to where business folks' level of thinking and operating is, rather than talking necessarily about agile software development, because lean is software independent, like it's from manufacturing. So it's less threatening to people who are not from software development themselves. So I talk about things like lean wastes, phase stream mapping, calculating flow efficiency, visual working as well, Kanban, of course, and, you know, the plan, do, check, act, Deming cycle. Because what I find is if lean is accepted at the leadership level and they can understand those kind of concepts, then it's a nice big relief for agile teams. Because as soon as leaders get that, oh, work in progress, we should limit that, and now agile teams might have a better time of things, then it's the ride for agile teams is a lot more smooth. Spotify model, I know it's not a model, but I don't mind copying a little bit of that kind of tribes, squads, guilds, chapters language as quite transferable ideas, which can be useful when bringing transformative change. And also, like Spotify, you can watch the culture videos and you can pick good things out of them, whereas it's very hard to present a leader with SAFE and say, there are some good things in here, but we don't want to follow all of it because it's just like so big and overwhelming in its entirety. Whereas Spotify, like there's not enough in it to overwhelm anyone really. But you really just do have to have flexibility and understand where people are coming from. This next idea, the IKEA principle. And so get ready to write in the chat, folks. So I utilize this idea of IKEA principle because if I don't feel involved, I'm not likely to get on board, for me, right? And this is the resistance that we experience all the time. You know, we have to do it with the people and stop enforcing predetermined approaches and frameworks onto people. So does anyone know what the IKEA principle is? Anyone happy to say in the chat or even come off mute? You don't have to. Just trying to make it interactive for you all. So
if you
go, Peter.
Yourself, you'll have an emotional connection to the process, and so you're more engaged.
Exactly, 100%, Peter. Top of the class. Thank you for contributing. So the principle itself actually is about making furniture affordable, accessible, and easy to assemble for customers, which, you know, when we think about IKEA, that makes sense. And, you know, thereby democratizing stylish home furnishings. And, you know, if we keep that in mind when it comes to redesigning aspects of the organisation, that is by allowing people to construct it themselves, make it easy and accessible, you'll get more love from the people that they designed this change. And then they're proud that they owned it now. It's like their baby. So I think the IKEA principle is a real important one not to lose sight of. And so you can even use these tools without the labels and still get a better result, right? Just because you know what the lean stuff, the Japanese words mean, they don't need to know them in order to get the outcome in every circumstance. I mean, that's kind of why they have you, an expert, to guide them through this. So flexible set of tools wielded by your expertise applied to different contexts. All right, number 3 is leaders get knowledge just in time. And note, this is for leaders. I have different strategies for whole populations and how to help them with knowledge and capabilities, but they're not the populations that need to get it first, leaders do. And that's a bit of a pattern in itself that I've been kind of doing wrong for a lot of years, like trying to start with teams and hoping that leaders will just catch on, but they don't, that I found in my experience. So instead, I've been doing this lately and it is working, and I found there's a kind of a sweet spot of giving just enough knowledge at the start of any workshop or any session in order to have an effective workshop session discussion afterwards. And, you know, I've learned that by doing it the wrong way, and I've had a few disastrous workshops go wrong. You can hit me up in the chat or hit me up on LinkedIn later if you want to hear that story. So for this, I've learned to kind of recognize what information the leaders that I have around me are dealing with. So what their knowledge level is already. So you need to have met them, interacted with them, and have some sort of context of their issue. And you also kind of need an opinion on what you think is going to help them, or at least a hypothesis on that. And these are your kind of raw materials that you're going in with. And the idea is to provide enough knowledge in a non-condescending way to be able to then carry on and do a workshop with the people effectively. And I'm just going to share with you exactly how I do it. And the way I do it is I book a workshop to co-design whatever the thing is that we need to co-design. It could be a prioritization model. It could be how the squads are set up. It could be you know, the kind of ceremonies that we're going to have scaled across several teams. Whatever the workshop is, book an additional 30 minutes of time at the start so that you have time for learning before the workshopping begins. But don't tell anyone this is our learning bit. It's still just the workshop that you're doing. You've just allowed that extra time. Now, if they absolutely won't allow you to have the amount of time that you need to provide that kind of learning, then make a video about what you want them to learn. So make a video over a deck of slides that tells them the theory about the topic and allows you free space to get your logic and reasoning about the topic out there. So you don't get gazumped by all the but what if, this won't work in our organization type objections. Great things about creating videos is they give you reuse for when you want to share knowledge with other people. You can send it out for pre-watch before the session. You can even just watch it in the session. You can say, did everyone see the video? And if enough people say no, you can say, okay, we're going to hit the play button and we're all going to watch it together. And then you can watch them watching your video. And this kind of stealth bit of learning allows the knowledge into the workshop beforehand. And so now you have your extra time at learning for learning at the start, and or maybe some video collateral to back it up. And you can even make your icebreaker to be about the topic. I assume we're all doing icebreakers, right? Give me a show of hands that we're doing. Lots of nods, good. We're doing icebreakers. Great. So you can use an icebreaker that doubles down on some part of the learning and something that you're about to workshop. Like you can create a queuing game to give you some knowledge about issues with waiting times, or you can compete a small team versus a large team in order to show the difference of maybe trying to do a challenge together, like a prioritization challenge. And so now you've got some icebreaker information to circle back and reference to in that session as well. So why does this work? So I found this just-in-time pattern of bringing knowledge lets me get leadership teams to come on a bit of a journey together, and it helps you level set some knowledge because you've probably got a mix of experience in your leadership groups, right? Experienced people who will instantly understand the concepts or maybe know them already, and those that might be brand new to it. And for leaders of any style is very vulnerable to admit they lack knowledge. You know, it's dog eat dog at the leader level. It's competitive. They're not going to want to look ignorant in front of each other. They have to be seen as knowledgeable. So slotting in this knowledge in disguise as either friendly icebreaker games, videos that we can all align on makes your workshops that much more productive. And if you're not workshopping these things with your leaders, well, guess what? They're not experiencing any change, right? And remember what we said about experiential learning. You won't be able to access that IKEA principle. They won't be able to support and defend the new way of working if they feel like it's being designed by other people or by coaches and they've got nothing to do with it. So, and what I found is there's not many whole groups of leaders who will actually attend like a comprehensive 1 day or 2 day Agile basic sessions. You know, I've had that happen twice in my very long career, right? So you're much more likely to get attendance at workshops and then just be able to slot in the learning just in time. So that is an absolute recommendation here. And my final pattern, of course, is that you need to pull away from the lure of the overly prescriptive frameworks that come, you know, with their own certification machines behind them. What you need is experience and or research and or a network of experts that you can bring together and apply these and other patterns. And you'll find that we're kind of all saying similar things, and we're all using the same useful models, patterns, tools to help us out of conundrums. But these useful models, patterns and tools and, you know, these mindsets need to be wielded with skill and that test and learn approach. And this is where the experience is needed and the skill of the coach can be applied. And AI won't have much to help us here, right? It's a human experience. So my advice to you on this is to be brave, reach beyond the frameworks and reach beyond the big consultancy approach. And it's interesting, you know, like there are often times when I engage with people that have all the certifications, certified up the wazoo, and then you dig into it and find out what they're using is the same stuff you're using, actually. They're not using the framework. They're actually using their experience and expertise to do the right thing. You know, the framework might be the thinnest veneer that they're using because it's the prevailing trend at the organization. So unfortunately for you, those experts don't usually hang out at the big places. They're kind of more niche, independent type people, are often not the best at marketing themselves. Probably we've got a few of these people on the call today. but let's make sure that we go the extra mile to find them. Let's make sure that these people have actually worked inside an Agile team themselves. You know, if we're going to let them loose in coaching Agile teams, please, let's get people who have been in Agile teams themselves. If you look at successful transformations, you tend to see that is the pattern: expert coaching and facilitation, or cohorts of experts, meetup groups, you know, lunch and learns, creating those kind of interest groups inside the organization, and then they start to hire within a network, and those experts know how to wield those flexible sets of tools. And sometimes, unfortunately, if you look at the unsuccessful ones, they're the big consulting approaches, and sometimes you don't even get to hear about the failures because they've invested so much money that they cannot possibly say to their board, we've spent all this money and we didn't actually get much out of that big amount of spend. So those are my 4 patterns: generate aha moments, wield your flexible set of tools, leaders get knowledge just in time, and keep it frameless if we can. So remembering back to the start of the talk and why I'm so passionate about this, there is an empowered, authentic way to transform, I think, that's more accessible and effective than large-scale consulting-led framework approaches, and it's going to yield better success for you. So please steal and apply all of these patterns and more that are in the book. Like, I've got 18 chapters and 30 stories in the book. And the book I wrote because I don't think we have enough tools and experience to have no framework conversations yet. So I want this to be a thing that you can sort of give to an exec and say there's another way. It's cost neutral, maybe it's even cheaper or free, and it's available for you, because it's crazy to keep paying for just a 30% success rate, right? So if you can help me start to spread these more empowered and authentic approaches, then we can stop some of these sham transformations. And I think we can rescue this terminology and the reputation of Agile back from those heavy framework consultancy-driven ways. And what I found about myself is I need to get better at the conversation. And hopefully I've given you some tools and better ways into that conversation yourselves. And we can show these executive leaders that it's not something to fear. They're not giving away control of their organization. They're actually tapping into how people want to work so they can engage and enjoy their jobs. And it's ultimately going to lead to better outcomes. Alrighty, special offer for y'all. So we have paperback copies for $12 plus postage. That gives you about $10 off the Amazon price if you want to, while stocks last. So go to my website, which is www.alexanderstokes.com, if you want to buy a paperback copy in Australia. And I'll put the links into the chat as well. But if you want to buy the ebook, it's an Aussie dollar right now in Amazon for you. So if you've got a Kindle, or if you want an ebook copy, then go get it for $1. And if you do, please leave a review. They really do help. That would be awesome. If you read it and you like it, I should say. So I'm opening Q&A. And my first question, if there are not any questions already, is, did anyone have an aha moment?
Before you get to that, Alex, I'm just going to say I did actually read your book last year, and it was the best book I read in 2024. It wasn't the only book. I did read a few, but it was by far the best book I read all year. So I'd recommend anybody interested in this space to go do it. And like I said, I was CTO, as you said, mentioned, I was CTO at Kmart, and we went through a massive transformation. We actually got off our mainframe, and we rebuilt our complete online system and went through probably the biggest technology change in Kmart's history. And Alex was my coach and coached pretty much most of my leadership team as well. So if anybody's looking for their own coach, I'd strongly recommend Alex. That's my shout out, and I don't get paid for saying that, but yeah,
I should pay you, Mike. You're very kind. Yeah, thank you. Fun times at Kmart. Who else has a question?
Hey,
Jane has had
hello.
another. Yeah,
April's
go for
got
it.
a question.
Sorry. Hi, Faye.
Go.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I have been multitasking a little bit, listening while feeding children and bathing them, etc. But they're entertained right now. Alex, that was really, really interesting. Thank you. And I love the idea about the aha moments with leadership. I think maybe we've had a couple of those recently when we really sat down to do it intentionally. But the thing that I find a bit overwhelming is that there are so many people.
Mhm.
And like, my portfolio alone, which is one of 4, we have like multiple heads of products and multiple directors and all of this sort of stuff that we're dealing with, and let alone, next levels down, EMs and PMs and all of that.
Yeah,
Just getting to all those people.
it is hard, isn't it? It is so, and it's just like the more people, the more kind of like storm of change that's going on inside the organization. I think it's if you have noticed aha moments happening, I think it's really important to try and grab them as they're kind of zooming past, and try and make a bit of storytelling out of that. Like ideally get the person themselves, especially if they're in leadership positions, like try and find those opportunities. Where can we, oh, you shared something really important about how you observed this happening in the team and how this was great. I'm just going to get John to tell this micro story at this next meetup. So like one thing is to have the occasions where you can sort of like platform those leaders to, because everyone in the organization is watching them and listening to them, right? And if they're saying, wow, if John's glomming onto this, I better glom onto this as well. So make sure you're kind of trying to grab those stories, platform them, even if people are too busy, they don't have time. Well, what can we grab and turn it into a blog post or a newsletter or whatnot? And also just make sure there's a chapter inside the book called, I think it's called it's called Internal Advocates and Change Agents in Charge. It's all about gathering your advocates and creating those interest groups, those lunch and learns. If you can create a really vibrant sort of learning community inside the organisation that can operate under its own steam a bit, then you've just got more occasions when you can you can sort of trumpet and signal those events happening. I mean, I'm just telling you kind of what's worked for me, April, but great question. It is so challenging, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions? Peter's shared an aha. Leadership's getting knowledge just in time. Yes, use videos. And there's some great video tools. Like I've been using Loom, which you can get a free subscription to a certain number of videos. It is so fast to record videos on, and it does all this kind of AI editing for you. So it doesn't have to be super fancy. It's just about trying to create that little bit of space where people can actually just listen to my message before you start asking me all these questions or telling me why it won't work. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. That was nice. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
So, Alex,
Yeah,
I can see someone else has got their hand up. I don't want to jump in.
good.
April?
I'll stop presenting my slides so I can see more of
Sorry,
you.
Gail, that was from before you. Go ahead.
Oh, cool. So I suppose not really a question, but an observation and an aha moment. One of the observations one of the things I realized is I've seen someone else do this in an agile transformation. They've come in and they've essentially applied what you've been talking about and pivoted to a few different modes. And I've seen that being fairly effective, where I don't think a cookie cutter model would have been effective. And the aha moment for me was we're focusing on how do I foster relationships so I can see those aha moments in others coming and be able to grab them, and then communicate them, and to use that as a way of influencing others and creating energy. So if there's energy there, sort of go with it and not just observe it, but grab onto it and kind of feed it and nurture it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can tell you in my early career, I spent so much of my time going like, oh, they don't get it. Why don't they listen? And now I've changed that round more to try and understand those individuals and go like, what are they seeing? What are they believing? What are they? And I've become like this ultra curious person now. But yeah, I used to be quite oh, they don't get it. They'll never get it. And now I'm like, what aren't you getting? Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And just in time, like letting leaders get things just in time, it makes a lot of sense, because they're time poor, especially if they're not engaged, which is, as you said, one of the biggest challenges we face. So it's this has sparked a passion for transformation again in me. I think this is where I need to focus a little bit more energy.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask, Alex, you mentioned about the future of 90-day planning, and were you seeing that going with AI? Could you talk about that at all?
Yeah, we've actually got a blog series that my co-founder Tony wrote, 5 steps to undo your quarterly planning if you're interested. It is hard to undo it. I don't hate the idea of quarterly planning if an organization is coming from absolutely no agile kind of cadence or way of working at all. It's not a bad first step, but I'm never going to implement SAFe anymore, I'll tell you that much. But the idea of having a quarterly cadence doesn't offend me. I think it's better than having an annual cadence, for example. But what I'm seeing in a lot of places is that it can lead us into this idea of trying to predict everything for 12 weeks. And then it can, which is fine. It's okay to say, we think we can do this in 12 weeks. But then disappointed leaders going like, well, they said that I'm going to do this in 12 weeks. And at the end of the 12 weeks, it wasn't possible to do it. And I just wonder, are we actually avoiding the big elephant in the room, which is it's pretty hard to predict some of this stuff actually, and trying to predict it 12 weeks out when you know the least about that thing that you might have just picked up off your kind of ideas backlog might be the worst time of all to try and predict when something will be delivered. So if the organization is mature enough to know doing some mid-range planning is just part of how we plan, but obviously plans improve and we must update as we go along, that's fine. I think the trouble with SAFe is it sort of over-promises that, oh, now we're going to move in these 12-week cycles and everything's going to be absolutely, this is what's going to be delivered and we're going to make all these commitments. And so heavy. And then sometimes all that happens is that the quarterly cadence stays, but nothing else about your good ways of working stays. And so now we're in this awful kind of death spiral of every 12 weeks, we're just sort of over-promising and under-delivering again. So what the mechanisms, and you can go and have a look at our blogs, that we use to kind of undo that is to, it's actually in the Spotify videos as well. Henrik says, if something is difficult, do it more often. So maybe instead of doing it every 12 weeks, we could do it every 6 weeks and see if, that makes us be less ambitious and a bit more reasonable about what can be done. And if what we want is more planning, that helps us plan a bit more. And then maybe we can move from 6 weeks down to every 4 weeks. And maybe that's a good cadence. Like it really does depend on the organization, how fast ideas are moving in the organization. But what I'm seeing with AI, I'm sure what everyone is seeing, is things ain't slowing down. They're only getting faster. So, do we really want to subject ourselves to 2 days in a big room planning session anymore? What we see is maybe on the 12-week horizon, we might say, this is what we think all the teams are doing, but we're not going to have a big deal about it. And we're not going to spend a lot of time listening to what 12 other teams are doing. We're just going to say, this is what we're going to try and achieve. And then we'll try and on a more regular cadence, update those plans as we know more. Does that make sense? There'll be some good info in those blogs, just even a few little tips and tools that you can use as well to help you.
Thank you.
I think what I'd add to that, Alex, as a leader and as a person who has teams coming to me with that stuff, is you have to show progress, though. Yeah, I mean, it's okay to say, we're going to run to this cycle or not, or we're not going to have all the answers, but you have to give something, though. Yeah, something within some time frame. You can change what that something is. You can change it, but you have to give something back. Yeah, because if you just take the words that Alex is saying, it almost sounds like you're saying, I'm not going to do any planning. I'm not going to commit to anything and just leave me alone. Yeah. And give me the money to do it. Yeah. Which is going to be suicide for any IT leader to do that. So you have to be able to deliver the more value more often. That's really, you got to be delivering something. Yeah. That's that was my aha moment almost. But but somebody said, hey, I've got something to give you, leave me alone. Yeah. And if somebody was giving me something, I left them alone.
Yeah. And I think it's beautiful, Michael. Coming out of Michael's mouth there is like the pure frustration of every exec leader with some of these agile ways of working, right? All these people that are allergic to dates, they're not going to tell me anything. So, what we would do is we would encourage the teams to push that information up and out. And the way we do that in Agile, right, is we have showcases and we show the working increment. So, but when we, when SAFE is so overwhelming, or when our big frameworks are so overwhelming that it's very hard to cope with it all we're going to do is go to that quarterly planning thing. Well, we've forgotten about having retros, we've forgotten about doing showcases, we've forgotten about engaging people in the delivered work. So I think, showcases for me is a classic. It's one of the first things people drop, but I think it's such an important thing, because it gives people, you can see the increment evolving, and so people start to get empathy for how long this stuff takes, and it's real progress. It's not 80% done on a spreadsheet. And it's also one of the more positive ceremonies in Agile ways of working, right? People get to celebrate and go, isn't that cool, we built stuff? Whereas planning is like cognitively hard and it can be quite anxious. So yeah, showcase is a good one too for that.
I like to do an empathy map on sprint reviews. What as an executive, what do I want to get out of it? What do I want out of this thing? And then have the team think about that. And,
yeah, nice.
But thank you. That's great. Really great to hear your insights on 90-day planning.
Yeah, great questions, everyone.
Well, if that's all the questions, then we might wrap it up. Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much for giving up your time to share your insights for Agile Perth. For me, my big aha moment was the aha moment of helping leaders find their aha moments. I thought, oh, of course, this is what has been missing from so much of Agile Transformations, is helping the leaders connect to their why. And thank you for the 4 steps that support this, because that helps us have a very clear action plan of how we can help our leaders find their aha moments. Everyone, I will post some links in the meetup so that you can get this great book at a bargain. And please, if you created a sketch note, be brave and share it. You can flick it to me, you can post it in the meetup chat, you can share it directly to Alex. I will pass it on. It's like getting fan mail, so please don't hold back.
Yes, I love the visualizations for sure.
Thank you, Alex. Everybody, please can we give Alex a round of applause? You can use your emojis at the bottom of the screen.
Thank you for your engagement. Nice, engaged, and all of the emojis were awesome as they were rolling up. I could see them. So that was great. Very nice to talk to such an engaged meetup group. Well done, Faye, for organising this.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I'd love to attend again in the future.
Great. Well, we'd love to have you back, because I think there is more gold to be had from you. So Agile Perth, we are coming up to our 15-year anniversary. So please keep an eye out for our get-together in June. Alex, this one's going to be in person, but, you are welcome to pop over to Perth.
Can I justify? Maybe.
Let's see if we can wrap it in with some other work event.
That'd be lovely. Escape the Melbourne winter.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks for setting it up, and lovely to meet you all.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, the ones of you that
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
See you, everybody.